I had a friend who just came back from a Zen retreat, and he sent me an email sharing what the retreat was like. And at the end of the email, this is what he wrote. But the main message and the main goal of meditating at all is to hopefully begin to notice that whatever it is we are referring to when we use the word I, as in I see a tree, that I doesn't actually exist inside the body. If you cut open your head and look in behind the eyes, you won't find an I there or anywhere else in the body. The implications of this are profound because it means that while the body will die at some point, one's true nature, which is the genuine I am, is not a physical phenomena. So as spirit, not only does it not die, it was actually never born in the first place. This can be a huge relief when actually experienced directly rather than simply thought about like a philosophical idea. So we could say that the practice of meditation is the practice that will bring us in direct contact with reality. And as I just shared from that paragraph, the reality I'm referring to is not the reality that most people consider to be reality, right? The reality I'm referring to is the reality in which who most people think they are in terms of being a person or a personality or a body is not real. That is not reality. So in a sense, when you practice meditation and when you learn from the teachings that go along with meditation, you're really learning that everything that you thought was the case, that the reality of it is that it's the opposite of that. And the reason that this is important, as my friend shared, is because if you can get to a place where you experience this, right, not just understand it philosophically, in these classes, I have spent a lot of time kind of explaining and sharing with you the concepts and the teachings and the understandings that are involved in all this stuff. And the reason for that, the primary reason for that, is to motivate you to practice meditation. Because without the meditation, if that's all you got, it would be empty. If that's all you got, it would be worse than empty, because if you understood it and if you believed it and if you considered it to be true and you didn't experience it, it would haunt you. You see? That's one of the problems with institutionalized religion, because institutionalized religions, for the most part, depend on faith and belief, don't they? They depend on faith and belief. And so you can see how that doesn't work, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who believe in God and have faith in the Word of God and have faith in the teachings of their particular religious beliefs, right? But how's that working? Are people who have those beliefs and that faith living their life as if it's true? One of the great Zen teachers, when asked what meditation was, he said, meditation is a practice that you practice so you can be happy when you're old. Right? So those of us here who are old enough to understand that know what I'm talking about, right? Because if you aren't prepared for the inevitables, if you can't be with the fact that impermanence is a fact, impermanence is the truth, right? Nothing's permanent, everything is temporary, life is short, this is a brief visit. If you can't be clear about that and you can't accept it and you can't let go of the attachment to trying to control and the attachment to trying to avoid reality, then you suffer, as I have said here many, many times, right? It's a very, very simple axiom. And the axiom is anything that you resist persists, and anything that you resist will result in suffering. And so it's very important to keep coming back and pointing out that as you and I go through our everyday lives, we generate suffering. How do we do that? Well, as you go through your everyday life, and you train yourself, hopefully through meditation, to pay attention to the voice in your head, and you disengage from it like it's not me thinking anymore. There's this voice in my head, and it's not me thinking. It's a narrative. It's an ongoing voiceover, right? You know, it's like one of those, if you ever seen a documentary and there's somebody's doing a commentary, they're talking about what you're seeing. That's what the voice in your head's doing, right? Talking about what you're seeing, talking about what's going on. And so if you're attached to that and you identify with that, then there's going to be a lot of suffering going on, because if you pay attention to that, you'll notice how much of the time during the day that it is saying no, right? In some form or another, right? Saying no, saying, I don't agree, I don't like that, I don't want that, shouldn't be like this, should be different, why is it like this? If God was fair, why would God do this to me? You know, whatever, right? And whenever that voice rejects the way things are, you suffer. Why? Because now you're in conflict with reality. That's why, right? Now you're resisting the flow. Now you're taking issue with the way it is. And one of the things that is the way it is that most people don't recognize is that there's a way out of all this. I mean, if there is a God if there is a grand design, right? If there's a grand design, then the design would be something like, we'll have you be in a human body, and we'll have that body be different than everybody else's body, and we'll have you be unsure whether that body's okay, and then we'll have you exist in a life in which you'll find out as you get conditioned, get older, that this is temporary, that the body's going to die, and you consider yourself to be that body, and so you're going to die. In the meantime, you're thrown into the world and in competition with everybody else, you know, to get enough food, to get enough money, to get enough shelter, right? And so you get put into the rat race. So meditation offers a way out, and if there's a grand design, it's a pretty good design, right? Because it's basically saying you're screwed. If there's a grand design, the grand design is basically saying you're screwed unless there's a way out of this, right? And that's what I meant when I said earlier about getting older, because obviously as you get older, you know, there's less time on the clock, right? And as you get older and there's less time on the clock, and you still notice that you're still crazy after all these years, right? And you still make the same stupid mistakes, right? And you still waste a lot of your energy on useless worry, right? As you get older and you see that that's the case, it's like you feel like you're going to miss the boat, like you're going to leave without ever having been here. And that's actually pretty accurate for most people, because if you're living your life in your head, you're not living your life in your life, right? If you're thinking your way through life, you're not being in life, you're thinking about it, right? And it's not possible to be very satisfied when you eat the menu instead of the food, right? So meditation offers us a way out, and it's not talked about this in commercial presentations because nobody would buy it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this is straight talk, right? I mean, I'm not blowing smoke, right? This is straight talk. This is like the way it is, right? And most people are not interested in the way it is. Most people are interested in the way they want it to be. And if you're talking about that, they're interested, right? But if you're talking about the way it is, oh no, don't talk about that. You know, don't talk about death. You know, don't talk about sickness and old age. Don't talk about that. I want to try and keep that out of my awareness. So this is a way out, and the way out that it is like every time you sit and meditate, you're making a deposit in the bank account of your life, so to speak. right? Because you're directly changing the conditioning, right? The conditioning, what you learned is true, who you learned you are, what you learned as the way it is, right? If you meditate, you're directly working with the brain to stop relating to that way of being and that way of understanding things as if it's true. That's what you're practicing. Stop relating to the voice in your head as if it's you, right? Stop relating to the voice in your head as if it's you. Because if it is you, you're truly in trouble, right? If the voice in your head is you, you're truly in trouble. Why? Because that voice is a fear-based voice. That voice is the voice of the mind, and the mind is interested in avoiding pain, avoiding discomfort, and seeking pleasure and seeking comfort. And so as long as you're listening to that voice, if you start to pay attention to what that voice is saying, right? It's saying, avoid anything that's uncomfortable, avoid anything that is painful, avoid anything that you don't like, and seek after everything that you do like, that is comfortable and provides pleasure for you. And so that's your life. That's your life. And as you go through that, the thing that makes it worse than that is as you go through that, since you consider yourself to be the thinker of the thoughts, so it's not just a voice in your head, it's you thinking, right? Since that's the case, and since the thought process is so unrealistic, and since the thought process perpetuates an ongoing suffering, right? Since that's the case, and then you identify with the voice in your head and consider it to be you, so then you also consider yourself to be wrong or crazy or bad or dysfunctional. You must be wrong, crazy, bad, or dysfunctional to think such thoughts, right? About you, right? And about everything else that you have these reactive thoughts about. The problem with this solution is that you can't cheat. You can't pay more and you can't buy an exclusive ticket to well-being. Everybody's on the same playing field when it comes to this. And it's up to you to either understand what this is and be motivated to practice it consistently, or not understand what it is and not be motivated and dabble in it, which is a waste of your time. It's just a waste of your time. So if you're going to meditate, my first recommendation is make up your mind. Don't let your mind make you up. Make up your mind whether you recognize what this is and whether you recognize what it offers you and whether you recognize the importance of what it offers you. And if you really do recognize that, then the motivation to meditate will be available to you. It'll just be available to you. That doesn't mean that you still don't have to deal with the states of mind that will come up, right? That will try and talk you out of it, right? Or it doesn't mean that you still don't have to deal with the energetic states that will happen. You know, one of the ways the mind uses the body to avoid things is it has it get tired. You ever notice that? You ever notice it? Were you ever in an intense conflict with another person and all of a sudden you felt so tired, all you wanted to do was go to sleep, right? That's the mind's way of dealing with what it doesn't like. It has you go unconscious, right? It has your body go unconscious. It has your body get tired, right? It has your mind go unconscious. It has you become desperately interested in anything but what's happening right now. That type of thing. The only problem with that is that there's nowhere to escape to. There's nowhere to escape to from life. Wherever you go, you'll be there, right? So if you can move to Europe because you think you'll be happier there, and it won't be long before that turns into the same thing as you were having here. That's the way it goes. And if you understand that, then you don't waste a lot of time trying to beat the game. You can't beat it. You can't beat it. However, you can escape from the suffering and actually enjoy old age by practicing meditation consistently, so that over time, two things are happening. Over time, your brain is reorganizing itself and establishing more realistic patterns of perceptions and behavior. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that happens is, if you discover that the truth is that what you are is awareness itself, and that awareness is already you, is already here, has always been the case that that was who you are, that means that that's always available. So while it may take practicing meditation to change your brain, the possibility of your waking up and experiencing the reality of yourself is always available, and that's why you have these people, these teachers talk about these enlightenment experiences. The right way. One of the keys to practicing meditation is to not do it with any expectations. You do it simply to experience what's happening when you're doing it. It's not for something at another time. You're doing it to experience what's happening when you're doing it. You're meditating because over time, if you sit here being aware, and when you're sitting here being aware, you're being aware of thoughts coming and going, not me thinking thoughts. You're being aware of thoughts coming and going. In other words, you're sitting here being aware of what is actually true. You're sitting here being aware of what's actually real, right? Which is that you're not your body. You're not this idea that you have about yourself. You're the awareness of all of that. And you can sit and be aware of thoughts coming and going, or you can sit and identify with the thoughts, and then after sitting for 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, you'll say, I can't meditate because I just can't stop thinking. Do you understand? That's because you didn't pay attention to the idea that the thoughts that are arising in your mind aren't coming from you. The evidence for that is so obvious that it's ridiculous, right? I mean, the evidence for that is that if I ask you what you think, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to talk about this, but the evidence for that is as simple as, if I ask you what you think, you then look to see what the voice in your head says and tell me. Well, if that's the case, why do you have to look to see what you think? Why do you have to look to see what the voice says to know what you think? But you see, we're so used to relating to the voice in our heads as me thinking that you just, the trance comes back on, and that's the way it is. So one of the things you have to do in order to practice meditation is you have to break up the relationship with the mind. You have to get a divorce from your mind. You have to stop identifying with the mind and understand that if you're going to meditate and get the benefits of meditation, you're going to have to be able to do what it takes over time consistently, no matter what you think and no matter how it feels. No matter how you feel and no matter what thoughts arise, you come back and do it. What the hell kind of life are we living when our primary focus in life is, and primary purpose in life is to distract ourselves from reality? That's a worthwhile thing to consider. You know, what kind of life am I leading when distracting myself from reality is one of my primary operations? And what I mean by distracting yourself from reality is anytime what you're doing is to avoid something, or anytime what you're doing is to get something that you don't have, right? Living in the past or in the future is distracting yourself from reality. Okay? So, the truth is, you won't get this in the commercials, but the truth is meditation is hard. Meditation is challenging. It's not going to be comfortable, especially in the beginning, because you're going to have to sit there with what you've been avoiding, right? You're going to have to sit there and be present to what you've been avoiding, which is a relationship with your own mind. And so it's challenging, and you have to have a committed attitude about it, that you understand the value of it, and therefore you're going to do it consistently over time, regardless of how it feels or what thoughts arrive in your mind. If you practice meditation over time, and some of you have been here for a while, you'll begin to notice that your patterns begin to change. The way you have been being in your life starts to change. The way you have been being in relationships starts to change. One of the things that I noticed very clearly was that in romantic or love relationships, where you're at risk, right, because you could get hurt, right? In romantic or love relationships, or in family relationships where you're stuck with people, you didn't get to choose your parents, right? You're stuck with people, right? Those are the places that you will see a difference being made when you meditate. So I say these things to you because it's important that you understand it's going to take some practice here. This is called the practice. It's going to take some practice here. It's going to take some time to do this, and it's going to take some time that you stay connected to these teachings and you keep deepening your understanding of all this and keep allowing yourself to make contact with the truth, which is that this life that you've been given the opportunity to experience will only happen if you wake up. Otherwise, what people call life, right? What people call life is a struggle and an ongoing upset, an ongoing difficulty, where you do the best you can to do whatever you can to be comfortable and to avoid suffering until the inevitable strikes, right? And everybody is just trying to, get as much as they can out of it before the shit hits the fan, right? So there is a way. It's not, this whole process of meditating and learning about these things is in and of itself challenging because your mind is always trying to get this all figured out, isn't it? Yeah, your mind's always trying to get this all figured out because part of your conditioning as a human being is if you can think about life enough, you might get it figured out enough to succeed. Of course, it never happens, right? But we human beings consider thinking to be the apex of human experience, don't they? I think, therefore I am. We have made thinking such an important aspect that we depend on it. So, whenever you're confronted with situations that are challenging, what's the pattern that you fall into? Let me think about it. I got to give that some thought. See what I mean? So once you discover the truth of yourself and you understand that awareness has always been behind it all, if it wasn't for awareness, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. Awareness has always been behind it all. You stop considering thinking the end all of everything. You start understanding that awareness knows. You can know what's going on without thinking about it. That's a big discovery, isn't it? It's a big discovery that you can know what's going on. You can be aware of what's going on without thinking about it. Ask a race car driver that's driving a car 230 miles an hour. They ain't thinking about driving the car.